percent overall from the field, but he was also 50% from threes. He's 5 of 10.
I know you're out there. It's okay. Stand back there.
No, more than likely, you're going to get that number 1 seed. And so I want Houston to be ranked at number 1 and 8.
Welcome into another episode of Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. We are coming off the heels in what is the biggest win so far of the Houston Cougars men's basketball season. Number 2 ranked Houston, who moved up in the Associated Press poll and the coaches poll on this Monday afternoon, and they got a top 6 win against the number 6 Iowa State Cyclones in what was really a game that was a little bit odd in terms of how it played out. Houston jumped out the gates strong early, and it was a defensive slugfest throughout. Iowa State really struggled to put the ball through the basket. And really, towards the end of the first half, Houston struggled as well. The difference as they closed and went into halftime was the free throw shooting and free throw disparity. That completely changed in the second half, and Houston never really lost its lead, but they were always arm's length. Iowa State can never get over the hump, and the Houston Cougars come away with the victory. They beat Iowa State 73-65, and now sit atop the Big 12 Conference all by themselves at 10-3. Iowa State falls to 9-4 in conference. Houston improves overall to 23-3. With that being said, Dayon Dunlap, thank you for joining us here on this episode of Let's Rage Coogs. How are you doing, sir?
Man, I'm doing well. What a game. Iowa State were not quick. It seemed like every time Houston was about to pull away, they would keep fighting away, hit a three or get a basket or try to keep the state in the game. But so shout out to them. They're a really tough team, but shows how good Houston really is, especially how electric that crowd was. I saw you tweet about it, and it looked like they really played a big factor in it.
Oh, big time. I tweeted it out heading into the game, going to park, which for media, they park in the parking garage that's right across the Fertitta Center. I've never seen so many. The students, first of all, the students filled out the entire section all the way, not just the courtside seating, but all the way to the top. They were filled 20 minutes prior to the game, which I hadn't seen. We're going back to last season when they played Alabama, and there was just a lot of people across outside of the stadium waiting to get into this game. Now, when it comes to this game in particular, they definitely played a big factor early. I think that's one of the big reasons why Iowa State struggled to score, and Houston kind of got into a double-digit advantage early, and really that was a cushion that they were able to keep at bay, at arm's length, the Cyclones overall. But when it comes to this game, we have to start with the top. It's the head of snake, Jamal Shead, who had a decent first half, but he really turned it up in the second half. And if it wasn't for Jamal Shead, this Houston Cougars team would have been in a much different place against Iowa State. This is just second half stats by themselves, because they're really good stats if you just look at them. This is second half only. 20 points, 5 of 7 shooting. He was 2 for 2 on his threes, 8 for 9 from the free throw line, which is very pivotal down the stretch to help put that game away. 5 assists. Again, that's all just in the second half for the game. Jamal Shead finished with 26 points. He was 12 for 13 shooting overall from the free throw line, had 6 assists, 4 rebounds, only 2 turnovers. So really, really great performance for Jamal Shead. And of course, we'll talk about all the other guards as well, because it wasn't just Shead by himself, but he was ahead of the snake. He really helped take charge as Houston put away Iowa State.
He really was. And I tweeted out watching last game that he's the most complete point guard in college basketball. And I think he puts that on display tonight, especially his basketball IQ and his feel for the game, to know in those moments when to take particular shots and get into his mid-range, because they were doing a great job of keeping him out of the paint in the first half. And then he started getting to his mid-range, which kind of opened up the floor. And he did a good job of getting other shots, just creating shots from LJ or throwing the oop to Javier and just really making the game easier. But Emmanuel got off to a good start. We'll talk more about him in a second. But Jamal, he's really, really playing like a pro. Just the way he's seeing the game, his feel for the game, and the way he's able to dictate the pace and make play after play. And defensively, he's still getting steals. I wonder what his vertical is, because I think it must be really high, because you can tell some of those plays when he's trying to front the post and try to throw it over top, he's able to get his hands on the vertical. And so I'm very impressed with Jamal. I think he will Big 12 Player of the Year if Houston wins the conference.
Yeah, a couple of times when Jamal Shed was switched onto one of the big men for Iowa State, Chris and I talked about it during the game.
Yep.
It reminded Chris of Kyle Lowry. He kind of took that as a challenge when they tried to quote unquote feed it into their big, and obviously Iowa State would see it as a mismatch, as an advantage for them. Jamal Shed didn't let that happen, and he was scrappy, he was fighting, clawing, and he really made it difficult just for Iowa State to be able to get the ball into the post. And that's a great comparison. Kyle Lowry, obviously known for his ability, with just how feisty he was whenever he would get on switches and he would be matched up with a bigger player.
Yeah, I like that. No, I definitely agree with that for sure. And his ability to just to front the post. I think so. I think Jamal is. I think this team complements him well. You just look at the pieces as you go back into the Villanova in that game. He was the one taking the most of those shots when Kyler was off and Tajay was off. You just look at the pieces around him. I think LJ complements him well because he's a shooter in the floor spacer, and Emmanuel is just a scorer that can also shoot. That's one thing that I want to. A few things I saw about Emmanuel once we talk about him that I really, really want to go in detail about. But Jamal, I think we go as he go. We go as he go. I think he's going to take us to the promised land.
I think the big thing for Houston fans in this game, obviously, we know what happened last year whenever they had another top 10 team come into the Fertitta Center in Alabama, and obviously it didn't go the Houston Cougars' way. Well, in this game, a little bit change in script. Houston, again, jumped ahead. They were able to keep Iowa State at bay, but, I mean, looking at the wins that they have this season, and obviously this season's still far from over, Houston turns around. They have another tough test on Saturday morning in Waco against number 11th ranked Baylor. But really, there's no excuse. Not that obviously us that covered Houston game in and game out, we never talked about it being a fluke. Like, we could see how hard to play that translated. There's no reason why the quote unquote worst they've done for the past 4 years in the NCAA tournament is a Sweet 16 run. But right now, they're showing a national audience. This game moved up to the 8 p.m. time slot. This is a prime time slot for ESPN, and they put on a show. I mean, they showed Houston Cougars basketball, and it was the physicality in this game. We'll probably talk about the officials a little bit, but it was just so physical that even for Iowa State, who was a physical team in its own right, and they gave Houston headaches every which way themselves. But it was an adjustment period for them. They struggled to match Houston's intensity at the beginning, and that very well could have been the difference in this game.
I think that was the difference, especially in the first half. Houston defense and their intensity really got them off to a good start. Iowa State didn't make that third field goal to around 90-40 in the first half. And that says how good Houston was defending and moving and playing together on one unison and just disrupting everything that they wanted to do. Now, I think their defense was predicated, and that built off the crowd as well. I think their energy built off the crowd through their defense because each stop, the crowd will make a lot of noise. And even when Houston kind of built that lead early in the first half as well. And so I think it was. I think the intensity and that travels. And I think the ceiling I was just texting with my brother, and that's how I know, like you were talking about prime time. A lot of people who haven't seen Houston because they don't follow them like we do, got to see them tonight. And one thing he was texting me about was Jamal Shed. He was like, "Yeah, he looked like a pro." I was like, "Yeah, who he remind you of?" He told me he reminded him of Ty Lawson, and so I'm liking what I'm seeing from him. I mean, he's doing everything that you want in the point guard, especially making his free throws down the stretch. That's what Houston needs, especially from the guards. Get to the free throw line. Got to make them. Him and Emmanuel did that really well tonight.
Big time. And that right there was the key. Houston able to put Iowa State away when they started fouling late. But when it comes to this game, obviously, Jamal Shed, the big headliner, but Emmanuel Sharp had 20 points in his own right, hit some very big threes. But I think the one player that hit arguably the biggest three, certainly down the stretch, Malik Wilson, who coming into this game had shot only 18 3-pointers the entire season, had made 3, and he made one of the biggest threes in this game. Again, it was Houston arm's length. Malik Wilson's three gave Houston that double-digit lead, pushed it to 66-55. One, credit in Jamal Shed for making the right basketball play. He was open, trusting in Malik Wilson to hit that shot. And kudos to Wilson, who we've talked about. He's earned his rotation minutes over the course of this season. And he gave Houston, he gave dividends to Houston and being able to hit that. I mean, he's still doing all the other intangibles that's earned him those minutes in the first place.
Yeah, and it was crazy about that shot. Watching the game on TV, he had just made the shot before, but it didn't count on the
Yeah.
pass. Same exact spot. And to have basketball goes, Jamal Shed, I'm sure he was mindful of that, and drove in, drew two defenders when they slowed down. He made the right play, same spot, bang. And that's what I said. I was still not watching it, like, wow. And that was a big shot. I think that was the one that felt like Houston. I think I was like made a couple of baskets. I think they kind of made it interesting, but that was almost like a dagger three, big three from him, and he shot it with confidence. And this goes back to a rotation. We've seen this rotation for 3 games, and I kind of said after the last game, I think Coach Simpson and staff has settled in with it, and I think it's rightfully so. I think he's earned it, and I love everything he brings.
Big time. If you hear that background noise, we're live in the Fertitta Center. They just played the Kelvin Sampson postgame audio, so we might unintentionally have Kelvin in the background, but that's him talking to the postgame media. Real quickly, I'd like to thank each and every single one of you guys that are taking the time here, whether you're joining us from X or on the various YouTube platforms at Podslamajana, my mistake, and on the Houston Rombar Review. Once again, the final score here from inside the Fertitta Center, number 2, Houston comes out victorious 73-65 over number 6, Iowa State. Jamal Shed with 26 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. Emmanuel Sharp, 20 points. LJ Cryer had 8 points. Malik Wilson, 7 points, and those 6 rebounds. I'd like to say thank you to Steve Saxenian for being the primary sponsor of today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs. This is Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian Family. And of course, we also like to say thank you to today's secondary sponsor in Star Pizza with multiple locations across the Houston area. Star Pizza is your go-to stop before or after the game. Be sure to stop by any of their locations every Tuesday during lunchtime for an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. Star Pizza, as always, has free delivery since 1976. And after this big win by the Houston Cougars, it'll definitely take a buffet to fill up your appetite tomorrow following the big win for the Houston Cougars. Then on the topic of Emmanuel Sharp, and it didn't turn out to he came back into the game, so hopefully it's a sign of positive things for Houston, but he kind of got banged up early on in the game. Came out late in the second half. He was grimacing. John Houston checked him out. Like I said, he did come back later in the game, but those 20 points, pivotal for Houston. We mentioned last game where LJ Cryer, Shed, and Sharp all played well. Well, Shed and Sharp played really well in this game. LJ Cryer struggled shooting from the field. But still, what can you say about Emmanuel Sharp's performance in this game against Iowa State?
Came up big, and I think he is the X factor. I think I'm kind of throwing that around throughout a couple of players throughout this season. I think Emmanuel Sharp, I think he's the one. He's been consistent all year where he's going to give you at least 12. However he's going to get it, whether his jumper is off, he get to the free throw line. Yeah, there's been games where he's only made 2 field goals but still gotten around 10 to 12 points. And so I think if he can take that and take it another level and be more consistent with getting that 20 points along with what Jamal Shed is going to give you, I think, and then because on a game-to-game basis, LJ might be hot, he might not, but he's such a lethal shooter that you continue to play through him and continue to keep him on the floor because of the threat he is, and at any moment he can go off like he did at Kansas. And so with that, I think you take whatever you get from LJ on a game-to-game basis because you never know, because he's streaky. Just kind of, and no shade to him, that's just how he's been. But respect to him because he can go off. But I think Emmanuel is the one with Jamal Shed. If he can take that and open a level and go on and run a game at 20 points, I think Houston can be favorites.
Eric Hudson's comment here on our YouTube channel. Even though Jamal was playing a player of the game, don't underestimate Sharp's impact during the first 10 minutes. Scott Doak says he loves the game that Sharp is developing. Feels like he is about to blow up. And this is something that we touched on earlier in the regular season, just how more well-rounded of a player Emmanuel Sharp was. Big game like this against a physical team in Iowa State. And
a good start.
was able to hold his own against a very, very physical defense.
Yeah, he's averaging 19 against Iowa State in both games. He had 20 points tonight, so basically 20. And like the comment, like they just said, he the one that got Houston off to a good start. I think he had 7 quick points within the first couple of minutes. He hit a three, drove a basket, and I think he may have got an and one or maybe he missed the free throw. So he had a quick 7 points in that first half. I think it just his ability to kind of stay out of foul trouble. He's been getting in foul trouble as well. You him stay on the floor and just take it to the next level. I think he can be one of the X factor because he's been consistent. But he just take that and add it to a 15 to 18 points, right around that 20 mark, with Jamal Shead being the point guard of the year. Was the Bob Cousy Award. I think he probably should win that too. He should be favored in that too. Throw his name in there. I think he need to start chanting that as well. I think he should be leading for that award as well.
Looking at some of the comments on YouTube, EI Crabtree 77 for Tita Center. Wow, what a crowd. Chris B says not many teams can emulate our defensive play style like Iowa State, which exposed a lot of Crier's weaknesses. Unfortunately, that's even more so in the NBA. What do you think about that? Do you think this is much more Iowa State kind of exposing Crier a little bit, or was it just a matter of off night? Now, it was a couple of bad turnovers that he had. He had a lot of good open looks too. They just didn't fall.
Yeah, I don't think it's nothing about exposing choir because the college game is going to be different from the pro. The pro game is going to be more spaced, in which he can get more open shots. It'll be a lot more players that can create, and he can spread the floor and catch and shoot and be a specialist in that. He reminds me of Eric Gordon. I mean, not Eric Gordon, Ben Gordon. A smaller two guard at any moment can erupt and go for 30 quick. I think that's who he reminds me of, a shorter two guard that's tough, that is now showing you he can defend and he can run the offense, lead the offense, but at any time he can erupt and be lethal. So I don't think it was more of them exposing him. I think it's just an off game, but he was still an okay game. I wouldn't say it was a bad game. He just didn't light it up. I think if he lights it up with Emmanuel taking it to the next level, that's what I'm saying. Houston can go there. That's what I'm saying right there.
And he did hit a big timely shot in the second half when I think Iowa State had cut it to 5 or 7. They were within there. He hit an open three from the corner right here in front of the Houston Cougars bench. I agree with you, Dan. I don't think this game in particular was much more anything that Iowa State did in terms of exposing him. Like I said, there was a lot of open shots that he had where you're going to make more often than not. It just didn't fall through in this game. The one thing that was, if you're going to nitpick on something in terms of LJ Crier, not even nitpick, but there was a couple of bad turnovers he had and just some fouls that were kind of.
That's what they were doing right here.
I wouldn't say. Let's see. What did the comment say?
I wouldn't say they were really speeding them up, but they were definitely running them off the 3-point line. So they were kind of speeding them up, making him play a little. I don't want to say faster, but they were definitely running them off the 3-point line.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he has to get better at is being able to create off the dribble. That's the difference between him and Emmanuel. Emmanuel can create off the dribble and get inside and finish or get all the way to the free throw line frequently. Emmanuel, LJ can play through. He can handle it and play through pick and roll and get inside and create. But he just needs to do more of that and be more better at beating the man one-on-one and creating for himself. Same thing with the man. I think that's what to take him to the next level. Create off the dribble a shot for himself. And if he, like he did, I think last game was step back 3. But yeah.
If you guys heard that blast, that's, I guess sometimes when the media's talking to the mic, it really blasts and echoes here. But for Tita Center, I was going to say this. Yeah, Crabtree's comment, Iowa State pressures the wings, though. Crier didn't have many looks. This is more testament to how well coached Iowa State is. There was a couple times where even Jamal Shead, they confused coming off the timeout. So there was one instance towards the end, right before halftime, where it was coming off a timeout, and Iowa State came in a half-court trap. And they had, I believe it was LJ Crier who they had trapped. And they had to burn a timeout in the first half, which obviously that's not what Houston wanted to do. There was a couple times right after that, Houston called timeout, and out on the other side of the timeout, Iowa State didn't come in that same defense. They dropped into a zone, and Houston didn't end up scoring in that position. It was a couple times, multiple times throughout this game where the Cyclones just switched up the defense, and sometimes they confused Houston, and again, it gave a lot of these guards headaches, not necessarily just Cryer. And again, it's a testament to what Iowa State, how well coached they are, and how strong of a defensive team they are.
Right, and they're a great defensive team, and we're credit to their coach, man, and Gilbert. Gilbert played well. Gilbert is a nice player. He was one of the players that kept them alive. He made shot after shot after shot to keep Iowa State in the game, and they just kept fighting. Defensively, they would get stops in Houston. That's how they got back in it. Houston went on a drought where they just weren't making baskets, especially in that first half. It was crowding Jamal Shedd and not allowing him to get to the basket. And then they got in foul trouble with LJ as well, and Manuel got a couple fouls. But yeah, I mean, I think this team has a chance to make a deep run. But Iowa State, they're a really good team.
Bobby Ray says props to Iowa State. They're a deep tournament team with that defense. To your point about Keyshawn Gilbert for Iowa State, man, he caught fire in that second half. He had
Nice.
15 points, 3 for 3 from the 3-point line, 5 of 7 overall from the field. But there was a couple threes that he was hitting that you just got to trip your hat to him because he, like you said, he's keeping Iowa State in the game. But again, kind of going back, praising Houston, kudos for them for keeping their composure and staying ahead. There was a lot of times when different teams could have allowed some of those shots to be
To come
demoralizing.
back.
And Houston,
Yeah.
Houston didn't let that happen in this game. When it comes to the Cougars in particular, one of the interesting aspects of how this game played out was how the officials handled the foul calls. Now, I think, Dan, you and I can agree that in the first half, Houston had the official advantage, or at least the free throw advantage with the way it had been called. I think Houston had 15 free throws in that first half compared to Iowa State's 3. And
Well,
in the second half, that completely turned around, where Iowa State had 12 free throws. Now, late down the stretch, obviously the Cyclones had to foul and to extend the game. Turned out that Houston ended up having more free throws, but there was a couple of heated moments on the stretch where Calvin Sampson was frustrated. The fans here inside the Fertitta Center were frustrated and started chanting a anti-official chant. They were saying the referees suck. But just looking top to bottom, there's a lot of foul trouble for both teams. I don't think there's particular storyline. I think the officials called it relatively even on both sides. Maybe a little unorthodox in the way that it stood, but LJ Cryer fouled out. He had 5 fouls. Juwan Roberts had 5 fouls. And for Iowa State, they had 3 different players with 4 fouls each. So, any thoughts on the officials before we move on to another aspect?
I mean, no, they were calling a lot of fouls. But I mean, watching it on TV, it was physical. I mean, and they missed them fouls too. So it was like I don't know. I mean, yeah, it was tough.
Miles Coleman on YouTube says, "This is great basketball. We are seeing this
Yeah.
game in the Big 12. This game is also a perfect tournament experience. This is a tournament level intensity game." And yeah, I agree 100% with Miles Coleman. And
Yeah.
the good thing, or depending on how you view it, for Houston is that they have a lot of these coming to end the regular season. And obviously, of course,
Hmm.
when they get into the Big 12 tournament, because it's not going to get any easy starting on Saturday when they have to travel on the road, 11 a.m. tip-off in Waco against the 11th ranked Baylor Bears. But this game against Iowa State, I think it's a little bit interesting too when you look at top to bottom. The bigs for Houston didn't necessarily have any eye-popping numbers. I think Juwan Roberts, the one that stands out in particular, only had 6 points. He did get 6 rebounds, but he was battling foul trouble for a good majority of this game. Picked up his 4th foul toward the middle stretch of that second half. Give props to Kelvin Sampson, who he picked up his 4th foul. I believe it was around the 9-minute mark in that second half, somewhere, give or take. And he put him right back in the game at the 7-minute mark, and he rode with Juwan Roberts. Same with LJ Cryer, picked up his 4th foul, put him in with just over 5 minutes to go, and he rode him and trusted them to, one, being able to stay on the court and help close out Iowa State.
Yeah, speaking of big man, with JVR, he played good tonight. He did. One time we talk about going up a dunk, he tried to dunk on someone, which tried, and that was impressive. But he played well. He was everywhere, rebounding, being very aggressive, very physical. I think that's one thing we don't talk about, his physicality. And they watch on some of the replays. He plays physical, especially going after his offensive rebounds. And so shout out to him. He was definitely an anchor on the defensive end, got a couple catching lobs, and I think he has to be more of a lob threat, especially in the pick and rolls when they're collapsing. The bigs are helping to try to keep Jamal out of the paint. I think he got to be more ready and catch more of those lobs coming down the coming down the stretch.
Big time. Javier Francis also led the team in rebounding in this game with 7 rebounds to your credit. Yes, it looked like he was going to put a couple of Iowa State players on a poster. Now, when it comes to this game in particular, Jawan Roberts and JoJo Tugler, the other bigs, Tugler scoreless, 0 for 3. He tallied 2 rebounds as well. And then, like I mentioned, Jawan Roberts battling foul trouble. He had 6 rebounds, had 2 assists too, and he had a great pass as a distributor in the second half where Houston, Jamal Shed fed him towards the extent. He was almost close to the corner on the 3-point line. And Iowa State's defense, I can't remember if they were in a zone. It kind of looked like they had been because there was one player that was guarding him straight forward and another player just waiting for him close to the dunker spot. And they set a back screen on one of those players, and give credit to Jawan Roberts, who was able to find Emmanuel Sharp on the weak side, gave him a perfect pass, and Emmanuel Sharp converted it into 3-point basket. That's one of those other aspects of Jawan Roberts' game where he's not just a traditional big man. He can do a lot of other things too. One of those that he showcased on that play was him as a distributor and being able to read the defense.
Yeah, good passer. Who would have ever guessed it that JoJo would have shot a 3 attempt before J1?
Oh, that was something that I don't think if you would have given
anybody would never guess that.
1,000 people unlimited guesses, I don't think a single person would have said JoJo Tugler was gonna shoot a 3. To his credit, he was wide open. Wide open shots were a little hard to come by, and Kelvin Sampson
and they do work on it.
He kept him in that game,
and they do work on it in practice.
Yes, I saw someone on Twitter replied to a tweet I made about that. He said that at Cy Falls, Tugler actually had showcased some of the shooting aspect ability. So it'd be interesting to see if a season or 2 down the road, it isn't as uncommon as it was in this game.
Right. Yeah, no, I was just kind of joking on that because we asked for J1 to at least shoot his mid range because they practice it so much, and we were joking because Coach Kellen Sampson in our interview that we have on our YouTube, he talked about J1 possibly shooting some corner threes, and we still haven't seen it yet. So who would have guessed that JoJo would have taken a 3 attempt before J1? But he was open, to his credit, and shout out to him. He didn't hesitate at all. And for his little time he played minutes, he had his impact, his length and his activity. He always stands out. You can tell he's going to be special. I think whenever he gets ready to leave Houston, he's going to definitely be a first-round draft pick.
Definitely, and just the confidence to be able to take it is leaps and bounds of where he is from a mental standpoint. He's confident in himself, and honestly, it says a little bit about Kelvin Sampson and his confidence in JoJo himself. Because, like I said, he didn't take him out right out of the game, so at least he has some aspects of confidence in him to either make up for it or heck, he was open. Maybe he was okay for a one-time shot. This season, Raul HE says even though JoJo didn't make his 3-point shot, he's extremely proud that he took the chance. And yes, again, it's a testament to his mentality. Miles Coleman jumping on the Malik Wilson train as well. He says also needs praise for raising his level of play the last few games. I don't want to harp on this too much, but I think it is worth noting that, again, for second straight game, and really, honestly, it's a trend that's been going on for the last handful of weeks. But Damian Dunn, again, I think we alluded it to on Saturday after the game against Texas. Right now, and obviously there's a lot of different things in the rotation, he is the 9th man in the rotation, and he only played 7 minutes in this game against Iowa State. And in those crucial key minutes, not on the stretch, or wasn't on the court down the stretch for Houston. Any comments that you think? I mean, he took one shot. It was a very contested shot. Maybe not necessarily the best shot selection, but it really seems like he's just struggling to find any type of rhythm on the floor. And obviously, we know that it all starts in practice.
No, well, like I said after that last game, I think Coach Sampson found the rotation that he's going with in regard. I don't when I look at it, I don't look at it like the ninth man off the bench. I just look at it like the next guard off the bench. And Malik Wilson has earned over the last two games. This is, I believe, the third to make it to where he's the first guard off the bench. When we see how well he's been playing, and we've been talking about it, and I think coach is going to that and will stay with that because throughout the season, as you've been watching it, he's trying to figure it out, like which the right rotation to go with. And I think they've found it. Now it's with Malik, and we've seen what he's bringing. You're seeing the confidence that he's having. Now he's even taking and making a three. So I think the confidence where he's only going to continue to grow in that role. And I think for Damian, now knowing the minutes that he will play, and I think Coach Sampson still will figure out certain times in the game may dictate who somebody may be in foul trouble, and he still has the offensive capabilities to still impact any given game. And so I think he's somebody we got in the chamber, and he'll be ready, I think, when his number is called.
Real quickly, like to thank each and every single person that's taken a time out of their Monday night. I guess it was President's Day, so kind of a holiday, but obviously going back to the work week tomorrow on Tuesday for taking the time out of y'all's night to join us here on Let's Rage Coogs. Of course, a big thank you to Steve Saxenian, who is the primary sponsor of not only today's episode of the Let's Rage Coogs postgame show, but for each and every single one of the men's basketball regular season. Of course, this is Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian Family. And of course, we also like to say thank you to our secondary sponsor for today's episode, in Star Pizza, with multiple locations across the Houston area. Star Pizza is your go-to stop before or after the game. Be sure to stop by any of the locations every Tuesday during lunchtime for an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. Star Pizza, as always, has free delivery since 1976. And also be on the lookout for a soon new commercial featuring and starring Ryan Elvin of the Houston Cougars men's basketball team. Dan, you put up a comment about Ramon Walker and giving good minutes. Anything you'd like to add? Because obviously we know what he brings to the table when it comes to hustle and intensity. He had one play where it looked like the ball was about to go out of bounds, and it would have been Iowa State ball. And just his effort diving on the floor brought Houston an extra position down the stretch in the first half.
Yeah, he's giving really good minutes. His energy, the way he goes after rebounds, he really just stands out with his athletic ability when the way he goes after rebounds, and his ability to switch. So most of the time when he's on the floor, they have able to switch primarily anything because he can guard 1 through 5. I mean 1 through 4. Excuse me. And, so I love what he's been bringing. I think when he's on the floor as well, in some instances, one time he passed up a jumper. Normally he's been taking those. And he's shown the capability to make them. Got to the free throw line today, knocked down his free throws. And so he's been giving really good minutes. One who continue to do so, especially playing against bigger guys. He did a great job of defending without fouling. Just put his arm straight vertical, contesting shots, even though they can shoot over them because they're taller.
Chris B's comment: 5 of the greatest point guards in the NCAA. Shed.
You know what?
He spit hot fire.
In an interview on Sports Center, he interviewed Coach Sampson and Scott Van Pelt, and Scott Van Pelt was saying Jamal Shead was his favorite point guard, and he liked watching him play. He asked Coach Sampson why does he love having him so much, and Coach Sampson said Jamal never gets mentioned when people talks about who's the best point guards in the nation. And he said he wouldn't trade Jamal for anyone. He said the Jamal Shead is the best point guard in the nation, and he's glad that he has him, and he's been developed. He said he's the model of this program, and that's what he said in an interview with Scott Van Pelt after the game.
And it's hard to argue with him. Like, if you look across the country landscape, I don't think anyone, especially at that point guard position, can do everything that Jamal Shead brings to the table and do it at the level that he does it. Not only he's a scorer, and he's a 3-level scorer. He can beat you from 3, he can drive, he can finish, and obviously he showed that he's clutch in terms of being able to finish his free throws. He can dish it out like anybody else. He sets up, he creates so many easy shots for his teammates, and he just has, and he knows his teammates very well. Going back to last season where it became kind of a signature where Marcus Sasser would be trailing him and Jamal Shed would kind of pitch it back to him, and there was so many threes that they were able to hit on that aspect. He's been able to do that with LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp. There was a couple, there was one in particular with Emmanuel Sharp that he had in this game. Sharp didn't make the 3-pointer, but just being able to, that's awareness. That's being able to have that relationship with your players. It takes time. It takes the effort from Jamal Shedd's part to be able to build those relationships and know where his different teammates like the ball, what they're going to do in certain situations. And then obviously defensively, like this is the reigning American Athletic Conference Defensive Player of the Year. He hasn't gone down any pegs in the Big 12. He's always up for the challenge, and I think he's the most well-rounded point guard top to bottom in the entire country, and it's hard to argue with Kelvin Sampson. As we welcome in Chris Gardner, who just came from the post-game press conference of Kelvin Sampson.
And I'm guessing Coach said to SVP what he said at the end of tonight's presser. Jamal Shead, best point guard in the country. That's what Coach Sampson said in the post-game press conference. Iowa State head coach TJ, Coach Muscles, talked about Jamal Shead, gave Jamal Shead credit for playing 37 minutes, 39 seconds. He said he was amazing on both ends of the floor, offense and defense, to get after defensively, to keep his team at bay from getting over the hump. Jamal and the Cougars made key plays. Iowa State, after it was 28-25, they never got closer than 3 the rest of the second half. Cougars got up by 11. State got within 5. Jamal hit a 3. Jamal scored 10 straight points at one point. Jamal did everything. And you guys are like you were in the press conference. Jamal said that, he knows his guys. He knows where they need the ball, the shots they need to get them going, things like that. Just like where and what you just said. Jamal knows his players, knows his teammates. He's a complete point guard, and he got high praise from Iowa State head coach. So it's a solid win. Iowa State was 7 for 9 from 3 in the second half, and some of those were tough 3-point shots they made. So you just tip your cap to them and say, "Hey, nice bucket." Malik Wilson, coach did praise Malik, but he also took a little dig at Malik on that blown layup Malik had, and apparently Malik told him in the huddle, "I was trying to go for an and one, coach." Coach said, "Malik, just make the layup, man. Don't worry about the one. Just make the layup." So, but Malik, clutch 3-pointer, corner 3. His rebounding was good too. He's coming along. Confidence on both he and Coach Sampson. So it's good to see. And, Damian Dunn doesn't have the confidence, in himself, as well as Coach Sampson in him. But the team won tonight. LJ Cryer did not play well, did not shoot the ball well. Jerome Roberts, foul trouble, did not play a lot of minutes. And they still beat, as Andy liked to say, the 6th-ranked team in the country by 8 points, led the whole game. How about that?
And real quickly, Chris, to go back to your praise of Jamal Shed, and I hadn't heard about that nickname for the Iowa State coach, Coach Muscles, but it's not.
He's got muscles, man. He's a muscular dude.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just it's funny, but it's not just him. It's not just the Iowa State coach. It seems like every night in and night out. Definitely after home games, because Houston never seems to lose home games. They haven't lost a home game so far this season, but it's every coach. Going back to Jerome Tang when they played K-State here, even going back just this past Saturday against Texas, when after the game, who's the players that always gets praised? It's Jamal Shed, and it's that recognition from those coaches across the country who have to game plan for Houston. It starts with just Jamal Shed, and that's a testament to the high level caliber of basketball that he's playing for Houston, not only in the Big 12, but across the entire country.
And one thing Coach Sampson said, because Iowa State did a job defensively, well, especially late first half, where they doubled Jamal on those high screens. And then a few times in the second half, they trapped out of zones, which is something most teams don't do. So Coach said we made some adjustments on that. We kept the ball in the middle of the floor. And sometimes basketball is very simple. And what I did, I kept the ball in my best player's hands. And that's what I did. Jamal had some players to help him get around the corner and get to the basket. But basically, I kept the ball in my best player's hands. and that's Jamal Shead.
Yeah, one of the ways that they were attacking that trap is Jamal will attack it and go baseline so they can't double him, then come back and get the second pick coming around. That way he get back to the middle of the floor with the outer trap, and then it's one-on-one with who is ever in front of him. So that was genius. I was watching that. I was like, wow, that was the smart and the way to be able to do that. And now allows them to trap Jamal and him have the quickness to be able to get around the corner knowing there's happening, knowing you'll intentionally come back to get the ball and be able to attack him. But the way he picked and chose his spots, knowing he wasn't getting all the way inside to the basket, he went mid-range and started getting his floaters. And then one of his biggest baskets was his and one against Brandon Limpson. So it's showing his strength. He's the most complete guard, point guard in the country.
And, LJ, a lot of LJ's looks today were good shots. He made them on Saturday. He didn't make them tonight. But Jamal did what a leader does, what a point guard does. He could sense that some teammates just didn't have it tonight. So he said, no problem. I'll take over, do what I have to do, score, assist, whatever. We're going to win this basketball game. And that's what happened.
Chris, Dan and I touched on this before you hopped on. But Johnny Casanova 713 on YouTube says this game tonight gives the Cougars exposure more than any game so far, the recruiting exposure they seek. Again, the primetime slot, we mentioned it, Chris. I think you had the soundbite of Kelvin Sampson talking on Sunday after the media scrum that he had about how he benefited the Houston fans to be able to get to the arena on time. And to their credit, by the time tip-off came, this place was buzzing. First 2 minutes of the game, you leaned over right next to me and you talked about how loud it was inside of the Fertitta Center, and it definitely was deafening in this arena. Give kudos to the Houston fans. Honestly, you give kudos to the gray seats because they were in their seats. I don't think you could see the gray for today's game, but they showed out and they provided a spark for Houston, and it definitely affected Iowa State early on.
And Johnny Casanova's point, there were some prominent high school players in the building this evening. And later on, I may share some good news with my brothers off air, but I can't say it on the air just yet because it's not official.
And it wasn't just men's basketball either. Willie Fritz was taking advantage of that atmosphere too with his recruits.
So it's great to see. The national exposure is great. And I know Coach Sampson doesn't like it. He's modest to a point because he expects winning. But I just got to say it again. It's just another example of how far this program has come. The national exposure this team gets, the recognition this team gets, the recruiting, the attention they're getting from some national big-time players. It's just another sight to see. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. I think just for now being a Houston alum, because I always just growing up, I always root for Texas because most of the best players out of Texas would want to go to Texas. So being a former athlete, you will always kind of have that. But now being a Houston alum, it's one thing I learned about Houston. Although they want to be part of that, sometimes they don't act like it and believe we are part of that. But Coach Sampson believes it and his team can back it up. So it's not a surprise. Every time they come in the gym, they are expecting to win. And so it is good to see it, like Chris said, and see the expectation change. And now the notoriety change. And Coach Sampson, I think, said one of the in the interview with someone else, that one of the biggest wins was their first NCAA tournament win at Houston, how that changed the expectation. Now it's not people were happy to get there. Now they're happy they're going further and further and further. And so I think this team really can go all the way. I think this team can make a far run.
I mean, for a long time, alums have been so pessimistic about expecting bad things to happen. And now Houston's at a point where fans are expecting good things to happen, expecting to win these games against other top-level teams. It's just another indication of the mentality has changed within the program, but also with the fan base. Fans expect Houston to win these games now. A couple of years ago, if it were, Houston, Cincinnati with those really tough Mick Cronin teams. Oh no, how bad are we gonna lose this one? But you could see the change in the talent level and the competitiveness, and now the expectations and how the team has done postseason. Now the results are on the court, and it's not just within the fan base. You're seeing it nationally that people
You
are
know,
expecting them to win.
you know who they recruit, in my opinion, it started with when I seen him in person, it was Nate Hinton. I think it started with Nate, in my opinion, that getting them top level recruits. I don't know what he was ranked, but when I seen him, I was like, oh, he one of them.
Well, getting him out of
And they got him out of state from
North Carolina,
Yeah.
because the bigger programs in Carolina recruited him late, and they realized too late what he was potential wise, and Nate said, "No, y'all late. Sorry, I'm going with the folks who were with me from the beginning." And that's Houston Cougars, and that helped right there.
I mean, on the topic of Nate Hinton, he was back inside the building of Fertitta Center for this game. Quentin Grimes came back. Obviously, Galen Robinson
Justin
was here.
Gorham,
Damian Dotson, Justin Gorham was here. To go to Crabtree's comment, Tank Dell's become a regular here. Tank Dell's never going to be the
C.J.
University of
Stroud.
Houston, and he's slowly recruiting C.J. Stroud to be at these games
Ed
back
Oliver.
to back. So definitely a lot of really just Houston celebrities in general that want to be a part of this atmosphere that is a winning program for the number 2 ranked team in the country.
Number one in the net, Andy. Number one in the net. Let's keep saying that. Number one in the net.
Number 2 in the polls. So, Chris, on the topic of this game, what else? Anything else that stood out to you from post-game comments?
Thank you.
Following Houston's win over Iowa State.
I'm not sure if y'all are smart. We got a smart audience, but one thing Coach said post-game that makes sense, kind of surprised me. He said to us he did not harp on the rebounding tonight, especially with the foul trouble to Juan. But Coach said tonight it was most important for him for the team to not turn it over. That's what he wanted to do. And only had 9 turnovers. And he said that was more important to him tonight against Iowa State, because Iowa State, they turn you over and score off those turnovers. So he said it was more important tonight to not have double-digit turnovers than rebounding.
And in the last game, Jamal had more turnovers than assists. And I said after the game, they won't win a game if he ever does that. Right. I think he had 5 turnovers and 2 assists. And so to that point, the entire team, they did do a good job keeping it. Because when they did turn it over, Iowa State was able to get out of transition and capitalize off of it. So that was, I'm sure, a point to emphasis, like you just said, he said. And they did a good job with it, starting with Jamal.
Kevin Hancock
says, "Go ahead."
Playing. Oh, I was just gonna put up this comment. Playing in these intense Big 12 matchups is gonna make the Cougs everywhere, or they're gonna make the Cougs everyone's favorite nightmare in March. And Chris, to go back to your point about Houston taking care of the ball, they also forced Iowa State into a lot of turnovers, forced them into 16 turnovers, which obviously Houston was able to convert themselves into fast break points. Houston had 9, which I think Iowa State is one of the best teams in all of college basketball and being able to limit fast break points. So I think Houston will take those 9 fast break points when they get them. And ultimately, they were able to pull away over Iowa State.
And the Cougs, with turnovers the State had, Houston scored 20 points. So it was 29 points on turnovers in favor of Houston. So that's all part of what Coach Sampson really wanted his players to emphasize tonight. Making adjustments, I mean, Dan has touched on it so many times about how Coach makes in-game adjustments. He's one of the best coaches in college basketball. He takes what his opponent does, and if it's working for them, Coach figures out, okay, how can I make it work for us and against them? In-game adjustments, he is great at that. Sometimes, at least 2 times a night, when they score out-of-bound plays, layups off of a baseline out of bounds, great execution. That's great execution.
Yeah, big time. There's a lot of drawn-up plays. I think in the second half when I need to go back. It was 60 in the 60-minute mark in the second half off a timeout, sideline out of bounds play where it led to a wide open Emmanuel Sharp layup. So I can definitely reiterate that standpoint. Chris, what I was gonna ask, any other takeaways from the post game presser?
Who was it? I think Iowa State came in. Was it Keyshawn Gilbert? Keyshawn or Trey King? One of those two came in with coach. And when Coach Muscles was talking about Jamal Shead making winning plays and answering every Iowa State run, the player nodded his head like, "Yep, Jamal Shead was the difference." Yep, you could see it. So what's the respect that Jamal Shead has from his peers and opponents? Young man, hey, he is proving his worth and his mettle. And one of my colleagues tonight, he's like, what Coach said about best point guard in the country. He said to me, "Why not best player in the country?" Jamal Shead has come a long way. Another thing that Coach said about him was Jamal Shead has earned his time. He waited his time his freshman year, and he's developed and continued to get better. And now it's his time. You can see him shining in the moment.
It's kind of crazy to think his sophomore year, he's kind of thrust in his position with all the injuries that the team suffered in the 21-22 season. He's never looked back since.
Yep.
Yeah, and that year, it wasn't built for him to kind of be his team, but look in those moments to where Kyler and Tajay was off in the game against Villanova. He was trying to step up and trying to make those plays, and he's such a better player from there, such smarter. But I think those moments prepared him from now. Now the team is built around him, and he's the guy not only to lead us and with his scoring, but also with his natural first playmaking, because that's what he naturally does. It was time after time again tonight where he made the plays easy for his teammates. All they had to do was catch and finish or kick it out for wide open shots. And so I think those moments prepared him for this. And I think this team and the players around him complement him so well. And I think their chemistry is as well. They know he's gonna find them, and so they move without the ball. They do everything that they need to keep the floor spread to allow him to operate. But now the difference is his shot selection, his ability to make those efficiently. And that's what really can set him apart from other guards and be a pro.
And as we wrap it up, gonna get your thoughts on this, Dayon. I mentioned to Andy when I think it was either Momcilovic or Robert Jones, one of the bigs for Iowa State, would try to post up Jamal, and Jamal fronted and battled and everything and kept the ball from getting to the post. What do you think about this as a comparison for to have a long time successful NBA career? A Kyle Lowry, Fred Van Vliet kind of guy, because those guys, you can't post them up in the pros. I mean, they take it as a challenge, almost like an insult. Oh, you think this because I'm short, you're gonna post me up like that? Nope. But you see them, that hard work, that leadership, they become scorers, they become overall players. How about that comparison for Jamal for NBA wise?
Yeah, I think if he can model a career similar to that for sure, and have a 10 plus year long career and do different things at different teams, whatever team may need, and be a leader and be feisty like a Kyle Lowry on the block, and be strong and be able to post up some guards that's smaller than him, and just do a lot of things. I think early his explosiveness and his strength reminds me of a Ty Lawson. But with all those qualities of, like you said, a Kyle Lowry and being a short like a Van Fleet, I think with the scoring that we're seeing now and his ability to do it so much off the dribble frequently is more of the Fred Van Fleet, because he's a more of a natural scorer. But man, Jamal, I love what I'm seeing. I think he can carry us. I think the team. What you think about this, Chris? Before you got on, I think the X factor, which I realized, is Emmanuel. I think whatever we get from LJ will take us. Will be like the cream on the top. I think. And Emmanuel's been so consistent with getting that 12, whether he's making 3 or 4 threes, or he's just making 6 or 7 free throws and 2 or 3 field goals. but he's been so consistent. If he could take that to the next level, to 20 points, anywhere from 17, 18, 19 to 20 points, anywhere in that range, I think that can be the catalyst along with what LJ, maybe he's hot. If he's hot and then Emmanuel was giving that, and it's like, okay, we're really rolling. But if he give you his 8 and Emmanuel still give you that 20 with what Jamal's going to give you, I think that can still carry the team to a long run. What you think?
Emmanuel, I'm trying to say this, and I'm not trying to badmouth LJ when I say this. Emmanuel has more to his game to get to the free throw line and get easy points that way.
He's a better scorer.
LJ is a spot up 3-point shooter.
Yes.
I wish he'd do a better job coming off that curl and getting to the paint and getting to the rim. Didn't have it yet. But
Another
Emmanuel
comparison.
Go ahead.
Another comparison too, before you got on with LJ, I think he reminds me of Ben Gordon, short 2 guard that any given time he can light you up for 30 and get hot like he did in Kansas.
Mhm.
But there be a lot of times where he's going like he played tonight, or he might go for 20. You know what I'm saying? But I think he can be that type of 3 specialist like that and go off at any moment.
Yeah, I think he's more of a specialist, whereas Emmanuel has developed more of an all-around game where he can get to the line and go to that contact, draw fouls when his shot's not falling. So he's done it 2 games in a row, and he got free throws with 8 for 9 from the line tonight. Got his 20 points. He scored different ways, and it's another indication for him in the development that he's had from his freshman season to now. Well, let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. This is the last question. Where does Sampson get a point guard for the team next season?
We talked about that, Chris. We mentioned it. That's going to be the big question in the offseason.
I'm going to say it, the portal. I don't know who it is. I have no inside info on that, but it's not Mercy Miller. Mercy, and I mean that in the sense of Mercy's he's a freshman. He's too young. You're not going to have a freshman point guard come in and lead a team that will be nationally ranked next season, top 10 next season. Don't do that to him. Malik, as Deion said last show, is not a point guard. He's a combo guard. So I'm saying it, somebody in the portal will be here. And the only question about that is, will that portal person be a point guard that Coach Sampson can trust, and be hard on and adjust to the system, the culture, the physicality, and all those expectations and lead the team that way. But I trust the staff to get it done.
What type of portal guy you think it'll be? You think it'll be a 1-year portal guy and they bring in a big freshman point guard and have him for a year? Or is a portal guy might have 2 or 3 years? Because I think in this next recruiting class, it'll be a point of emphasis to get a big-time freshman point guard, I think.
Yeah, probably 2 years.
Probably 2?
Yeah. Unless, I don't know who that could be, some elite point guard that's not happy in this situation, has 1 year left and says, Coach, I want to come help y'all get to championship. So, I don't know. Somebody falls in their lap like that.
Anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, on that note, like we mentioned, that there's one big test that Houston was able to pass against number 6 Iowa State. Doesn't get any easier on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. They have to travel up down the road to Waco against number 11th Baylor from the Foster Pavilion. 11 a.m. tip-off. That game's going to be on CBS for Cougars, but this is going to be the first meeting between Houston and Baylor since that Final Four game in 2021. What do you guys expect between that matchup? It's going to be another tough battle in a hostile environment in which Houston's going to try to get another road win. It's not going to be easy.
Baylor's youth and athleticism against the Cougs' experience, physicality. I'm kind of curious to see how Baylor handles Houston's pressure defense. Intense defense. They're playing at home, so that'll help, the Bears, the young Bears. But, yeah, Bears got young, talented players. But we'll see how they handle Houston's pressure and Jamal Shead playing like he is right now.
Yeah, they got a lot of length and athleticism, for sure. I want to see how the guards play, with the guard play with Dennis and Dunn, how they play against Shed and Cryer and Emmanuel. So it's going to be a hard fought game on the road. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, how will LJ play
going back
home?
That's the storyline.
Hmm.
He should be comfortable.
For sure. Will he be the one who made 6 threes on Saturday or the one who made 2 tonight? We'll see.
Right.
Curious to see how Houston ends up guarding Jacoby Walter, who, like you mentioned, one of those young studs that they have
Mhm.
in Baylor. It might be a rough night for a rough morning for him.
And how will those youngsters deal with facing Houston and their trapping defenses, their physicality for the first time? Because it's not like, it's similar to Iowa State, but it's not the same thing. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Like almost every Big 12 matchup.
Well, on that note, that's pretty much going to do it for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs. Of course, we'd like to say thank you once again to Steve Saxenian for being the primary sponsor of today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs. This is Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian Family, coming off the heels of number 2 ranked Houston, coming away with a 73-65 victory over number 6 Iowa State. Of course, we also like to say thank you to today's secondary sponsor in Star Pizza, with multiple locations across the Houston area. Star Pizza is your go-to stop before or after the game, and be sure to stop by any of their locations on Tuesday during lunch for an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. On that note, like you said, 11 a.m. tip-off against the Baylor Bears in Waco. It's going to be a good one. On that note, Chris, I'll toss it over to you. Any final takeaways and anything else? Where can people find you, sir?
Thank you guys for handling the show while I was listening to the post-game press conference. It's always a joy to be part of Let's Rage Cougs. Thank you to everyone tuning in on all the platforms watching us as we recap the Cougs' 8-point win over Iowa State, another grinder. But I am Chris Gardner of Houston Round Bar Review, and also salute to the guys at 365 Sports who had me on earlier today to preview tonight's Cougs Iowa State game. That's on the 365 YouTube channel. So watch that clip. I posted a link to it on my Twitter account at VHR Review. But other platforms, Houston Round Bar Review on YouTube and Spoutable and Threads and TikTok and all that great stuff. But as always, been doing this a long time. The Houston Round Bar Review since 1994. Local name, global perspective.
And just like it shows, well, no, it actually shows Pod Slammer Jammer, but you can follow me at Dayon Dunlap on all social media platforms. But be sure to follow the Pod Slammer Jammer page and YouTube channel as well. Appreciate all the support. Appreciate all you guys tapping in with us on this late Monday night after this big monumental win over another top 10 team. And now first place in the first year in the Big 12 era. Houston's now sitting in the top spot as we supposed to. And so congrats on the win. Looking forward to the next one against Baylor. As always, let's go Cougs.